So thank you everyone for joining us for our latest DC Emancipation Day program. Uh, Black Power in DC, a conversation with Niani Kilkenny. And as the State Archivist and Public Records Administrator for Washington, DC, I'm excited to be here to showcase programs where we talk about interesting figures in the Washington, DC region. And we have a wonderful person with us today, Niani Kilkenny. And Niani Montgomery Kilkenny, a veteran Black community, anti-racist and anti-imperialist political activist and organizer, served in the leadership of the Washington, D.C. chapter of the National Anti-Racist Organizing Committee, co-coordinator of the Metro Washington chapter of the National Anti-Klan Network, and member of the Southern Africa News Collective and the Southern Africa Support Project. A graduate of the Howard University with a BA in Business Administration. Kilkenny has been director of the program in African American culture at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History, coordinator of the program under the direction of its founder, Dr. Bernice Johnson Reagan, and public affairs director of WHUR-FM, Howard University Radio. Ms. Kilkenny, a third-generation Washingtonian, lives in the Shaw area of the city. She has 3 children, 3 adult granddaughters, 4 great-grandsons, and a great-granddaughter, who are the reasons she still fights. And hosting our conversation today is Mr. Ian Njenga, a student at Montgomery College and an intern in the DC Office of Public Records. And so I will turn it over to Mr. Njenga. And you are muted, sir.
Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Lopez. I'd like to thank you for giving me this chance to host this conversation and be a part of all these great people in this room today. I'd like to thank everyone else for being here to witness this conversation as well. So, Ms. Kilkenny, we can start off with a very simple question. Please tell us about how you got involved with the Black Power movement.
Thank you, Mr. Ian Njenga. I'd love to talk about that. It's kind of a circuitous route, but I got involved in the Black Power movement actually through my children. I was in Washington, D.C. As you heard, I'm, a Washington, D.C. native. I had gone to Howard University. I had dropped out to get married, have babies. I was theoretically supposed to have graduated from Howard. My class was 1967, but because I dropped out, I didn't finish. I had to go back to school to make up a junior and senior year. So I started going part-time in 1968, which was a critical time in the city at Howard University, because that's when there was a student takeover of the administration building and essentially Howard University's campus. And students were protesting and demonstrating for the right to have Black studies on campus. If you can imagine, Howard University at that time did not have Black studies, Black history, African American, anything. So this struggle was intense, but it was the juncture of the intersection from the old Negro capstone to a revolutionary new perspective of what a Black university should be. Because I was on that campus and among all of the progressive, exciting action, I was around people who were doing things in terms of identity and Black power and Black consciousness. And I was going, I like it up here. I'm glad I didn't graduate in 1967 and miss this. Well, in 1969, the Center for Black Education, which was, that's a whole history in and of itself. The Center of Black Education was a very wonderful educational program that grew out of Federal City College Black Studies movement. If you look at Jimmy Garrett et al., they created the Center for Black Education. Well, in 1969, they started a children's educational center.
Wow. Okay.
It was the Children's Educational Center that caught my attention because all of these people who were former SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee people
Okay.
who were involved with Drum and Spear Bookstore, Drum and Spear Press, all of these people that were around the impetus and the example of the New School for African American Thought, etc. These were the people that were around the Center for Black Education. So by virtue of the fact of being a Center for Black Education mom, I put myself right in proximity with all these dynamic Black power thinking, Black power leadership folks. And there I was. I was in the thick of it because I had located the babies in the Children's Educational Center at the Center for Black Education. I was there, I was happy, and I haven't left.
Yeah, and we thank you for that contribution to the Black history and society. And it sounds unfathomable to think that Howard University was incapable of having education facing Black people. But so, give us a bit more background from that process, from that point in time, and your interaction with WHUR Howard University Radio.
That's a big stretch of time.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. It might not seem so in terms of years,
Okay.
but it's a huge stretch in terms of my own development and my own work in the community. So because of my involvement with the Center for Black Education, I got immersed in a lot of Black community stuff. And Black community stuff was pretty much everything going on in the city because Washington, D.C. was a Black city, majority Black city.
Right.
And if you think about Washington, D.C. in the late 60s, coming into 1969, 1970, you had a city that had veterans from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and other civil rights organizations. You had a shifting in political consciousness. You had Vietnam veterans returning with a new sense of what it meant to be a Black person, not just in the United States, but in the world. You had political movements growing and developing and advancing throughout the Caribbean and Africa. And you had people here in this city who were involved in solidarity with these movements. So in that period, you had, in addition to the Center for Black Education, a real urgency for putting the children in Black schools that taught real history, African-based history, that we were children of Mother Africa. That was the kind of sentiment we were trying to impart. We didn't start off in Mississippi and cotton fields. We had a legacy and a history before that. So there was a real effort to get people involved in understanding the roots of our history, which meant an African, Pan-African consciousness. So there was a real flourishing Pan-African community here. And I was involved with, as I said, the Children's Educational Center at the Center for Black Education. But when the center closed the Children's Center, some of us started an independent school called BLACK, Black Inc. And we did that in order to carry on the education of the children. And that's how I got involved in a lot of what we call independent Black school movement. In addition to that, think about a city where everything from who's running the city to where people could live was a Black political issue. We didn't have voting rights. We didn't have an elected mayor. We didn't have an elected city council. We had a federal appointed, what they called these people, commissioners,
Okay.
just like any other colony. And the fight to get Black people represented, but all people in DC, the right to vote for our own elected officers. That was a political act. Because there were so many Black people, that took on a lot of Black power, political power kind of orientation. We finally did get an elected mayor. With 1974, we got our first elected mayor, who was Walter Washington. Marion Barry had come to DC, and he started, he was very active in Free DC movement. Part of that consciousness of, yes, we're going to fight to get the vote comes from activists like Marion Barry. But he had also created Pride Incorporated, which was setting up not only city contracts, but training young people and giving jobs to community. Marion had been elected to the school board, and then we also had an elected city council. So imagine having a population, a public that had to fight for the right to vote in the United States of America, where it is assumed that the right to vote is everybody's right.
Constitutional, that's right.
So the climate was very dynamic and very active. And because I showed up around a lot of community activity, community organizing, supporting groups, supporting people, supporting movements, supporting causes, I became seen and known as a community activist. I remember when WHUR came on the air, it was in 1971, December 10th to be exact. It was a beacon for activists who needed to have a voice, who needed to have what I would say a gathering place. And it was at that time 360 degrees of the Black experience. That is how WHUR was formatted and programmed. So it was music, news, and information. The music was world music, jazz music, gospel music, Latin music, Caribbean music, popular music, all of the above. The news was local, national, and international. And the station made sure that people listening understood what the implications were for Black people and Black power and every newscast it gave. And in those days, HUR did 2 one-hour newscasts, one in the afternoon and one in the evening. They were called the Daily Drum. And the people who were the news people, reporters, writers, editors, were also people from the movement, by and large, people I had met at the Center for Black Education, in community activity, in community organizing. These were people who were making sure we had the right news, the accurate news, as I said, international, global, Pan-African news.
That's right.
I was just amazed at the station, and I made a commitment to myself that I was going to make sure I got a position there. And it took me 3 years to finally walk into Howard University Radio and tell them I'm ready to work here. And I spent those 3 years making sure that when I went to tell them that, I would have a record and a resume that would make them say, okay, welcome to the staff.
Wow.
I joined the staff of WHUR in 1974, and I stayed there and did what was their mission: music, news, information.
News.
And
Okay.
it was a wonderful experience that I wouldn't trade for anything. But it was an essential place to be because, as I said, Howard University Radio was like a public platform for activists in DC, in the United States, and in the world. So we were covering African liberation movements.
Okay.
It was an Africa roundup that let you know what all of those letters meant. MPLA, PAIGC. You didn't just hear a bunch of letters. You knew what those movements meant. We also covered New Jewel movement and other revolutionary movements around the world. It was fascinating. And of course, we covered, as I said, national and local politics. And we had stringers who were also in, at that time when it started, based in Vietnam, covering Southeast Asia.
Wow. Do you happen to have any fond memory of from that time, of any particular event or, I guess, idea that you managed to get across or cover?
I think the most powerful memories I have are of the news department. I was in public affairs. Public affairs meant I made sure I had access available to organizations who needed to be on the air. And that was my job, to make sure WHUR was accountable to the community. But the news department, as far as I'm concerned, was the heartbeat of the station. And the news department, as I said, covered everything. And the most graphic memory I have of WHUR is a tragic one. And that was the murder of one of our colleagues in the district building during the Hanafi takeover of the district building, B'nai B'rith, and the Islamic mosque. And our reporter, Maurice Williams, was shot and he died of his wounds. Marion Barry was wounded. Another reporter was wounded, but it was a life-changing event for us, for the city. We lost a news reporter, we lost a colleague, we lost a comrade. I think the other thing that I will say had a real impact, WHUR was very conscious of the need to provide support for the Southern Africa support project. It was necessary for people to know what the stakes were in this fight against apartheid. And it was necessary for people to understand that the fight against apartheid required the concern and the vocal outrage of people all over the world to support the ANC and its battles at home in South Africa. And because of the consistent and persistent reporting, I would say we were able to lift up all of the work that Southern Africa Support Project, Trans Africa, the ANC, and other movements were doing to fight apartheid in the region, because it was South Africa, it was Angola, it was Zimbabwe, it was Namibia, it was Southern Africa. I do believe that WHUR's constant, persistent attention to these struggles were instrumental in cohering that solidarity movement in a way that would have been more difficult without Howard University Radio.
Right.
And in fact, I believe that. I know that to be true.
Right. And even as just from listening, that does paint a story of quite the coherent and quite a Pan-African idea of solidarity and consideration for the states. But somewhere along the way, you decided to transition to creating museum exhibitions and working at the Smithsonian. Could you tell us about that process?
I can. And actually, I didn't decide. Somebody invited me. I was working.
Okay.
I was doing some documentaries. And let me just say the cultural impact of Howard University Radio
Right.
is incalculable. Because we brought writers and musicians, playwrights, poets to the forefront and put them on the air. But I was working on a documentary about the civil rights movement.
Okay.
For King's birthday, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And I didn't want to talk about Dr. King as an isolated person. I wanted to talk about the civil rights movement of which he was a part. And I asked a scholar activist that I respected to be my advisor on the project. Her name was Bernice Johnson Reagan. And Dr. Reagan was the historian scholar for the Smithsonian African Diaspora Project for the bicentennial folk life. And she went on to create a program, which she called the Program in Black American Culture at the Smithsonian. And Dr. Reagan and I worked on this documentary. It was wonderful. It was 90 minutes of really great material. We had actualities from mass meetings and I mean, on the scene stuff. It was wonderful. And she liked it. And if she liked it, I knew it was good. So a couple of years later, I left the Howard University Radio because their commitment to news and public affairs diminished because they had to get ratings, which was fine. That was the direction they went. Thank God WPFW picked up the news, the Jazz and Justice piece. But Bernice Johnson Reagan asked me if I would come work for her. And I asked her, why did you ask me of all the people you could have asked? And she said, because I like the way you program African American history and culture on the radio.
Right.
And I like the way you build coalition, because I asked her to help me out in an advisory capacity when I was doing anti-Klan organizing. And because of WHUR, and the anti-Klan work I did, I was invited to go work for and with Bernice Johnson Reagan. And I coordinated the program she founded, that program in Black American culture. And when she retired, she designated me her successor.
Wow.
Which was an honor and a challenge.
That you had earned.
So I did. I stayed until I retired. But that job at the Smithsonian with Dr. Bernice Johnson Reagan was my second dream job. The first dream job was WHUR. The second dream job was program in Black American culture / program in African American culture at the National Museum of American History.
And it's amazing that you actually got to work at all your dream jobs, well, your first and your second. And but could you tell us a little about what you were able to work on in the Smithsonian?
I can. Bernice Johnson Reagan, and I have to call her name when I talk about Smithsonian because she's the essence of everything. She created a model for public programming. She had scholarly research professors, academics on panels with activists and practitioners so that each of them could inform each other about history, content, etc. And so that together they can all inform an academic and lay public. The programs were phenomenal. They covered everything from music to historical developments, liberation, emancipation. We did quite a bit on the history of oral traditions. One of the most significant programs I worked with, I was there for Dr. Bernice Johnson Reagan, was the Civil Rights Movement, Voices of the Civil Rights Movement, which was remarkable. And the product, she had CDs done that had every song leader that she brought in recorded. That's still available at the Smithsonian Center for Folklife.
Oh.
But those kinds of in-depth programs, and the public, we had a sustained public audience that actually made sure they showed up. Some of our programs were 3 and 4 or 5 day long symposia, but they registered and they were there and they were loyal. I can tell you that Bernice Johnson Reagan's expertise was oral history, civil rights movement history, and sacred music, sacred African American sacred traditions. The other thing she did was called Wade in the Water. And that was an NPR production that she had curated that included not only interviews, but music from, we talk about African American spiritual up to contemporary gospel. And that's a big span. So those were two major projects. When I succeeded her, I don't have any expertise in music, but I went back where she started. As I said, she was the person who was the scholar for the African Diaspora Project at Folklife, and she moved into the Smithsonian with her program. Well, when she retired, I picked up African Diaspora. So I continued her programming, the programming at the Smithsonian with a focus on the African diaspora. And I also continued the civil rights movement programming she had done. So we did programs on Middle Passage, we did programs on emancipation, abolition, et cetera, et cetera. All of those programs were huge investments in the mental research and talents of scholars throughout academia, and also people who were culturally expressing that history. And I can't even describe how wonderful the programs are. You would have to see them to believe
them.
Yes.
Right. Well, I mean, it seems wonderful that you're able to kind of carry on your legacy from your first job, working on the civil rights movement and empowering Black people, into this second job. Right.
Say that again.
Sorry, I said it seems wonderful that you were able to carry on your legacy from your first dream job in empowering Black people and the Black Power movement into this second.
Yes, it is. And Bernice Regan was the link
Right.
because it was her clarity of purpose. When I went to work for her, she asked me a very simple question. She said, "Do
Okay.
you have a mission?" I said, "I think I do." She said, "What is it?" I said, Dr. Regan, I really believe my mission is research and dissemination of African American history and culture.
Wow. Oh,
She said, "Good." She said, "Keep that mission in the front of your mind. Because if you come here mission driven, then you will not be incapacitated by people who try to threaten your job
that's right.
because you can do your mission anywhere." And she said, if you come here and stand firm on your mission, you will go far. And when people try to make you abandon your mission, you will know it's time to leave. And that's what I did. And that is how I was able to successfully deliver the programs, because most of the programs I delivered, people said, "You can't do that. We never heard of anybody doing that." And I said, "Oh, ho, ho. But we can, and we will." And we did. Because what were they going to do? Fire me?
Right.
I have a mission. Okay.
And a purpose. Yeah, and that seems wonderful. That you have such a well-defined mission. So could you tell us a bit more about what exactly inspires that mission in you?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Legacy. My
Like,
parents,
okay,
as I said,
that's
native Washingtonians.
uh-huh.
You know, um, my father is, born at Freedman's Hospital. My mother was born in on a farm right outside in Prince George's County. But they were race people, and race people were those who believed that you lift as you climb. My father is the one who would drag us to lectures, from listening to Mrs. Mary McLeod Bethune and Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. I'm going, oh my God, I got to go to one of those. But yes, he said, yes, you go. We're going to listen. My father taught me, he told me about Charles Hamilton Houston before I even understood what Brown v. Board was, because Houston lived up the street on S Street. He talked about people like uh, Colonel, now General Wes Hamilton. My father talked about people uh, like Mordecai Wyatt Johnson. He
Mm.
This was part of what he understood to be excellence, Black excellence. And he said, when you rise up, and you will, because you must, you have to lift people as you rise up. They were race people. And I'm thinking about his parents, his grandparents. I know my genealogy because I have looked for it. I can go back to 1800 in Charleston, South Carolina, with my dad's family, who were free dark people of color in the antebellum South. And I can go back to 1700 with my mother's people, who were Piscataway Indians in Cheltenham, Prince George's County, Maryland. And Piscataway Indians are Black, white, and Native. And if people don't want to hear the Black part, too bad, because Piscataways are Black, white, and Native. And if you take the Piscataways who are Black away from the people, you're only going to have 5 or 6 people left. So I understand that, and I look for that, and I reach back to that. So that inspires me. And I have tried to make sure my children understand where they came from and who they are. And they do. Now, my granddaughters also know, because it's part of what we did. We talked about our history. We talked about US history. We talked about Black people. And the reason I'm so excited is I have 5 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
5 great-grandchildren. My oldest great-grandson
Congratulations.
is a sophomore in college. My oldest great-grandson. I know that it is important for their parents, my granddaughters, to make sure they understand where they came from so that they can know where to go. And one thing that excites me about I want to say the Gen Zers, is the Gen Zers have made it a point to not only figure out how to stand firm in this crazy world that's trying to retrench all the gains that my generation fought for. The Gen Zs are trying to say, hold up, you're not going to do that. But in order to do that, Gen Zers are reaching back to the history and legacy, standing firm in the present to try to put a halt on the repression and regression. But Gen Zers are also imagining an African future, Afrofuturism, so that we will know we are supposed to be in tomorrow. I think that's phenomenal. It is amazing.
That does sound phenomenal. I think that is it's the biggest vocation I've ever heard given to Gen Zers. So yeah, it is inspiring to be part of that generation that you believe is doing so much to bring your legacy and the legacy of our forefathers into the future. And do you believe that we are any close to or any better in achieving this goal? Of,
Mr. Ian and Jenga, I'm watching you, and I know we are. I look at you and your peers, and I have so much faith in where you're going to take us. I believe that you're sitting here with Dr. Matthews and having a conversation with me is an indication of the reality that I can rest in my laurels. I'm an old woman. I don't have to fight. I have handed the gauntlet to my children who have handed the gauntlet to their children. That's you all. And I am excited about the possibilities. As I said, you all are dreaming a future that is intergalactic. You're dreaming a future that is multi-spherical. And you're dreaming it with us in it, and not only in it as enslaved people, but leading the world in that future. I see it in the literature. I see it in the films. I see it in the music. I see it in the poetry. I see it in the movement. I am excited and I am confident that you're not going to fail us. And what I know for sure is the ancestors are very proud of everything we have done, and they're with us. The voices of those people who ran away from the chains and the shackles to say, we ain't doing that no more, are still saying, like Mama Harriet Tubman, keep on going. Don't turn back. Keep on going. And you're taking Mama Harriet and Sister Sojourner and all of us into an unimagined future. And I'm excited. And I'm going to, at some point, be among those ancestral voices, but the ancestral stream is constant. And I know that it's going to flow. People say the struggle, freedom is a constant struggle, but I do believe that victory is certain.
Victory is very certain, and we hope that well, not hope, we every day we strive to put in the work to ensure that the next generation that comes after us will live in a better world that has more respect for Black people as a whole, and we can achieve this a bigger Pan African idealism and uh, type way of living. But I'd like to open this conversation to everyone else in the meeting if they have any questions for our guest today. Now is the time to speak. Please don't be shy. Oh, I see Lopez. Okay.
Yes, so I will ask a question. You said that you have faith in this new generation, and I think we all have faith. Yes, Ian, faith in this new generation. Um, how do you see social media, the role of social media, and how young people are kind of being active today? Do you see a correlation in the work you all did in the 70s with what people are doing today by using social media to protest?
I do. I see social media. I'm looking at the mimeograph machines, and we had to take a piece of paper and stick it on trees and run around and leaflet people and, hey, take this flyer and poster, and we had telephone trees. You call these and those two call those, and this tree, and that's how we got the word out. But I'm looking at this media, this social media, where you can put the message up and click, and millions of people can say, where do you go? What do you do? Why? And can show up. I think social media has enabled us to do more than I could have imagined. I am looking at the activity of these Black women who created Black Lives Matter and all of the other organized protests and activities that come up. I don't know how this works in fact, because I'm not at the center anymore. I don't know if y'all say, look, you didn't get the memo. This is where we're going to have the meeting. This is where we're going to have the summation. But I do know organizational styles change with the demands of the movement, the activity, and with the stuff we have to work with. So with social media, I think that the potential is unlimited, but I also know there's a competing access to social media by the enemy. So at some point, there has to be a way to countervail that. Media is still central to what we're doing, even more today than it was then. Reliable information is difficult to contain because of all of the tricks and dirty tricks people can play. So I think the challenge of the organizers today is greater and more complicated and more complex than it was when we were out there organizing. But the potential, as I said, is vast and unlimited. How does that work in the outcomes? I don't know. I hope somebody can let you all know, because I'm looking for you all to figure that out. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, I can make a case for either side because I believe that it's a very complicated conversation to have with, because technology evolves every day, and now with the advent of AI, it's becoming very hard to even compute what the capacity or the manner in which that social media might impact the conversation, because on one side you have people who might actually be wanting to use it to make a good case, and they might go in and get their hashtags, get their movement rolling, and basically just drum up support for their idea. But then on the other side, this organization is dependent on a computerized system and algorithm that might then just decide to, or the people behind the algorithm might decide to shut that idea down, and so then you might have suppression by means that is not even computable or foreseeable to the public user. So then the question becomes that is it capable to provide oversight to social media in a manner that is non-biased, that is non-computational, and that is fair to both proponents and opponents for a cause. But that is quite the conversation to have, and yeah.
It is huge. It is huge. And as I said, the terrain of struggle today is different. We would get out there and organize and protest and community-based building stuff. On some level, I still think that grassroots organizing is required.
Right.
So the question is, how do I build grassroots consensus? How do I build grassroots momentum? How do I have a consistent response? And I'm looking at some of these wonderful creative ways people are doing that with their own news networks. The narrative people, folks up, Dr. Greg Carr, and I mean, there are ways to take what is there and say, oh, we can work with this. How do we tell people you can't censor a book? You can't ban a book. Teach the daggone book anyway. I'm just saying there's so much to do and so many ways to get it done. I just don't know how, I'm thinking that we used to have like committees and, subcommittees. I don't know if that's possible today. If there is a central leadership today. These are some of the questions I have for organizers. And maybe it's not something that can be done or should be done. I just know that I see momentum and I see consciousness and I see activity, and I don't see people sitting down and taking it. I see people fighting. I see the struggling continue. And I know that after things get resolved and there's a sense of, wow, okay, we took care of that, we won. There's going to be something else. I mean, Vincent Harding wrote, "There is a river." This book the stream of struggle is ongoing. And if each of us understands that freedom is a constant struggle, then we'll know we don't finish. We take this victory and then we get ready for the next struggle. And it's this victory and it's that victory and it's another victory. So be prepared. I applaud you all for working and fighting. But please know that we did too. And so did our parents. So did our parents. Our parents say, wow, we got Brown v. Board passed. Yay, my generation said, no, we're taking it to the street. We're doing some nonviolent confrontation stuff. So the issue is do what you have to do now, but don't be discouraged if your children have to do something and fight some more.
Oh, I see a hand, Joshua Collins, please.
Hey, good evening. Thank you so much for your words. I just wanted to kind of enter the conversation and just commend the Office of Public Records for this, because this is a necessary conversation. And so my question would be, You know, given your experience and the role that you played in our city, you know, historically in the 70s, but even up until today, what are your thoughts on coalition building? I feel like a lot of times nowadays there's this push to, you know, build intergenerational coalitions to address you know, some of these civic issues that we're facing. And so I would just love to hear a little bit on what your thoughts are on coalition building and partnering with other, you know, races, other generations, other classes, when specifically trying to make advancements around Black issues and Black consciousness. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I don't believe anything gets done without it. Coalition building is essential. That's one of the reasons Dr. Bernice Johnson Reagan hired me. When we had to confront the enemy, we had to have more than us. And building that coalition was essential. But one of the things I learned about coalition building is make sure the points of unity are clear. This is what we are all united on, and the other stuff, don't bring it in here. If we are building a coalition to fight racism and whatever, that's what we're bringing in. And anybody who wants to end this racist whatever can come. If you, whatever religion, age, weight, height, if that's what you're fighting for, then come. If you go sidetracked and sidelined about, well, y'all are from, you know, Northeast and we only want people from, no, that's not how we do it. So yes, the coalition building and every campaign and every movement I've been involved in has been the essence. And that includes the anti-apartheid work, the anti-Klan, anti-racist work, and every other thing, even the work we did at the Smithsonian to make sure our program was protected. That's a whole nother meeting. I'm not going to talk.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, build those coalitions. Let me just say this. Two people who taught me a lot about coalition, three, Lawrence Guillot, Ivanhoe Donaldson, and John Gibson. All of them are now deceased, but they taught me about coalition building. And I treasure those lessons because it really helped us get what we needed, the way we needed it to move forward in unity with a broad, deep-based coalition.
Right.
So much.
Well, I see that we have 1 minute left of this meeting. I'd just like to thank you again, Niani Kilkenny, for gracing us with your presence. We are just in awe of everything that you've done to advance this movement. Again, I'd like to thank Dr. Lopez for making this conversation possible, and everyone else at the the Executive Office of the Secretary for being here and making this possible. So Dr. Lopez, I'd like to hand this conversation back to you so that you can head us off.
Thank you, Mr. Njenga.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Ian, and thank you, Niani, for participating in this great conversation. I have to say that I was riveted. I was sitting here listening the entire time, focused, taking notes myself. Just a great history, great program, and thank you so much for joining us for this year's Emancipation Day, and thank you all for joining us tonight and listening to just a great story of DC, a great story of activism. And so I thank you all for joining us. And
thank you, Dr. Lopez Matthews, for inviting me, and thank you for everything you do. I just really want to say I respect your work so very much.
oh, thank you so much. And thank you, Ian, for joining us this evening and being our interviewer. And thank you, Dr. Jacobs, for joining us. No, Sir Dr. Thompson, I'm sorry. I keep calling you by your name. I apologize. Thank you for joining us, everybody. And to our Deputy Secretary, Alma Candelaria, thank you for joining us as well. So she just left, but I will see you all later. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Have a good evening. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.